So let's just get right into it. Do you remember what social media used to feel like? Back when it was all about actually connecting with your friends? Well, something has gone seriously wrong. The platforms that promised us community and connection, they've become something else entirely. And we're going to break down exactly what happened. And honestly, this quote just nails it. What was once pitched as a town square now feels more like reality TV on crack. It's that whiplash, right? We went from a place of conversation to this constant, chaotic performance. It's no wonder so many of us are just completely exhausted by it. Okay, so to really get how we ended up here, we've got to go back, way back. Let's rewind the clock to the original promise of what everyone was calling Web 2.0. Now, at the heart of all this early social media was one simple but totally revolutionary idea: the follow. This was the whole magic trick. You had the power. You got to decide who you listened to, who you saw, and your feed was built around your choices. It was all about putting you in control. And that control created this incredible feeling, didn't it? It really felt like your corner of the internet. It was a space that you built yourself, around people you actually knew, and things you were genuinely into, not just whatever a platform decided to throw at you. But, well, you know how this story goes. That idealistic vision didn't last. The platforms got huge, they went public, and all of a sudden they had to answer to Wall Street. And Wall Street had a new question. How do you turn all that human connection into profit? And this, right here, is where everything begins to change. And this slide, this lays out the central conflict perfectly. You've got two completely different models. On the left, the old way, the follow feed. You choose what you see, and the goal is connection. But on the right, you have the new way, the algorithmic feed. Here, the platform chooses for you, and the goal is totally different. It's just engagement.
So how does that new model work? Well, it's basically an engine, a simple but incredibly powerful feedback loop. You get more users, so you can show more ads. Then you find ways to hold their attention even longer, so you can collect more data. And with all that data, you can sell even better, more expensive ads. It's a machine built to monetize our attention.
Patreon CEO Jack Kant, he puts it really bluntly. He says that once these platforms are tied to the stock market, the whole financial system is aimed at just one thing: sucking attention away from humanity to maximize revenue. That's the fundamental problem we're dealing with. And to keep that attention machine running, they use these incredibly clever design tricks. A perfect example is infinite scroll. Remember when websites used to have pages? Those were natural stopping points, a chance for you to decide, okay, I'm done. Infinite scroll gets rid of those breaks entirely, creating a bottomless feed designed to just keep you going and going and going. And here's the really wild part. The guy who invented infinite scroll, share³, he actually feels a huge amount of regret about it. He said he was just trying to make things smoother for the user, but he was totally blind to how it would eventually be used against people, as a tool to just quietly steal hours and hours of our lives. So you can see the stage was already set for this massive shift. And then along came the one thing that just poured gasoline on the fire: TikTok. This is the moment the algorithm truly takes over the whole show. Now, a lot of people think TikTok's big breakthrough was vertical video. And sure, that was part of it. But it wasn't the real innovation. The actual game changer was something way more fundamental. They basically threw out the follow model as the main way you get your content. Yeah, as Jack Kant explains it, TikTok's whole philosophy was just radical. They basically said, forget your friends, forget who you chose to follow. We are going to build your feed from the ground up, based only on what our algorithm thinks will glue your eyeballs to the screen. And you know what? It worked. It was so unbelievably addictive that every other platform, Instagram, Facebook, you name it, had to scramble to copy it just to stay in the game. And this huge shift from an internet built on people you know to one built on algorithms, well, it wasn't just a technical change. It came with a very, very real human cost. So, have you ever wondered why these feeds can feel so toxic sometimes? It's because the algorithm has zero interest in whether you're happy or angry. It only cares if you keep scrolling. And it figured out this really simple but dark truth about us: we will stare at something negative and outrageous for a lot longer than we'll stare at something positive. So guess what it keeps feeding us?
And if you want to know just how far we've drifted away from our actual friends online, look at this number. Meta itself predicts that by 2025, the amount of time you spend on Instagram looking at posts from people you actually follow will be down to just 7%. Think about that. 7%. The result of all this is a real, measurable psychological toll. It's that feeling of constantly comparing yourself to others, feeling kind of detached from the real world, maybe just being more irritated or anxious all the time. It's deep insecurities about our bodies, our lifestyles. This isn't some abstract theory. It's how millions and millions of us are actually feeling every day.
And you can see public opinion is really starting to turn, especially with younger people. Get this, a full 2/3 of people between 16 and 24 now believe social media does more harm than good. 2/3. That is a massive, massive shift.
Here's another way to think about it. You know, it's one thing to go to a casino and spend a couple of hours at a slot machine. But what happens when you put that slot machine in your pocket? When you can pull that little lever for a tiny, unpredictable reward anytime, anywhere, all day long, it short-circuits our brains. We're not wired for that. But here's the good news. People are not just sitting back and taking this. We're starting to see the beginnings of what you might call a quiet rebellion against this whole attention economy. And this isn't some fringe thing anymore. You're seeing it everywhere. The idea of a digital detox is totally mainstream. You've got the rise of these minimalist phones and apps. You even have bars and clubs creating phone-free spaces. And for a lot of people, the final step is the simplest one. They just delete the apps for good.
So all of this really leads to the biggest question of all. Where do we go from here? We are truly at a crossroads for how we communicate, how we connect, how we live as human beings.
And you know, this is where you can find a little bit of hope. It's like Jack Conte says, we gotta remember how new this all is. Humanity has only been dealing with the internet at this scale for what, 2 decades? It's brand new. Of course it's gonna take us a little while to figure out how to live with it in a healthy way.
Which leaves us with the single most important question. We've seen the original promise of connection. We've seen the pivot to an economy based on attention. We are living through the consequences, and we're seeing the first signs of a rebellion. So, as we all try to figure this out, what do you want the next version of the internet to be?